Jay Robinson, my God, at 18 years old. Broadway, your debut on Broadway with Boris Karloff. Tell me about that.
Well, it was extraordinary. I had made up my mind to be an actor at age 15. My mother had been a Broadway dancer in the 1920s. And at 18, I had an opportunity to read for a role in a play called The Shop at Sly Corner.
Right.
And Boris Karloff was the star, and playing a Cockney blackmailer. And anyway, got the part. We opened at the Booth Theater January 18th, 1949. I was all of 18.
At 18.
And had a big success playing this little fiend.
You were a producer also.
Producer a couple of plays later. I did did a play called Gaydon with Fay Bainter later in 1949, playing the title role at the Plymouth. And then I produced a play called Buy Me Blue Ribbons at the Empire Theater, the great historic old Empire Theater. And so many...
Jay, tell me something. Studied Shakespeare? At what age did you?
Never studied.
I can't believe you. You're sitting there to tell me such a great actor, as a Shakespearean actor, never studied?
No formal training at all.
Really?
The first opportunity to do Shakespeare was with Katharine Hepburn in As You Like It, which opened at the Court in January of 1950.
Working with Katharine Hepburn, Jay, at a young age.
Amazing.
Amazing, but was exciting at that time to work?
Yeah, I was all of 19. I had my 20th birthday during the run of As You Like It. It was wonderful to see her the other night receiving the Kennedy Center honor. Of course, all the awards over all the years and the 4 Academy Awards, and never showed up to receive any of them, and there she was at the Kennedy Center. In fact, I was moved to write her a letter a few weeks ago. Haven't had an answer yet. It's been 40 years now since
Did tears come into your eyes, Jay?
Yeah.
It did come in.
Yeah.
Such a great lady. Thinking back, 19, working with one of world's greatest actresses. I mean,
40 years ago. Amazing experience and a great inspiration. It was the first great star that I had appeared with. And
but Hollywood beckoned on your call and said, let's get to Hollywood, Jay, from New York. The Robe.
The Robe.
Oh, come on, tell me about with Richard Burton.
Yes.
Jean Simmons.
Yes.
Playing the Mad Emperor.
The Robe was the first movie in CinemaScope. It was 1953, and 20th Century Fox was about to go under because of the inroads being made by the new medium, a relatively new medium of television.
Right.
And they had tested every young actor in Hollywood for the role of Caligula, and had not found that curious combination of youth and evil that they were looking for. So I was out here on holiday, really, and I called an agent, Peter Shaw. I was married to Angela Lansbury.
Right.
And Peter said to me on the phone that they were looking desperately for a Caligula. They wanted somebody very young and very evil. And I told him all the roles I'd done in the theater. And he said, have you ever been in a movie? I said, no. So he said, well, just a minute. I'm going to call Billy Gordon, the head of casting at 20th Century Fox, see if they will see you. So he called back in about 5 minutes. I was staying at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown L.A. and said, yes, he will see you. Come to my office immediately. So he took me to 20th. Later, Billy Gordon told me, some years later, that sitting across the desk from him in his office, he could see the horns protruding from my forehead. I mean, I assumed the role of Clay. I knew nothing about Roman history, but I knew that The Robe had been a massive bestseller by Lloyd C. Douglas, and this was Richard Burton's, only his second movie. He had done, I believe, My Cousin Rachel with Olivia de Havilland, and now was going to play Marcellus, the Roman tribune in The Robe. So this was an extraordinary debut. Anyway, Billy Gordon said to me, will you make a screen test? I had no idea what a screen test was, but having never been before a camera.
Right.
Anyway, they tested me 2 days later, and 2 days after that, Darryl F. Zanuck, the head of the studio, saw the test at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
And sent Billy Gordon a 2-word memo, "Take Robinson."
Take Robinson.
So that was my, a few days later I was filming The Robe, and of course it was amazing.
How did you feel working with this great actor, Richard Burton? I know it was his second picture, but how did you feel working with him?
It was very challenging. I've always wanted to rise to a challenge, and of course he was this very pure Roman tribune,
right,
who converts to Christianity, and I am, of course, the mad, fiendish Caligula.
Yes.
So we had extraordinary scenes together. First in the slave market, the opening scene, and then, of course, later in the picture, he becomes a Christian, and I bring him to trial before the Roman Senate.
This is what I like to see right now. You do a scene with Jean Simmons in the court. It's fantastic. Can we show a clip from this?
This is preceding the trial. And then the little scene with Jean is followed by my address to the Senate. That sets Richard Burton as Marcellus up to be convicted for becoming a Christian. So this is what we're going to look at.
Yes, I love it because it gives the tape, it gives the feeling, the taste of J. Robinson as Caligula. Oh, that's great. Let's see it.
38 years ago.
38, okay.
Don't look very happy.
Have I reason to be?
There isn't a woman in Rome who wouldn't pray for this honor.
There's only one man at whose side I'd pray to sit.
Before the day is out, you'll be praying on your knees to me for his life. Senators, Romans, as you know, there exists today in our empire, and even in Rome itself, a secret party of seditionists who call themselves Christians. They have enlisted in their ranks the riffraff of the plebeian class, as well as slaves. We have known slave uprisings in the past. We remember Spartacus. But now, it grieves us to inform you that one of our own tribunes has betrayed his trust and joined this party of conspirators. You, not we, shall be the judges of his treason. Bring in Tribune Marcellus Scallio.
Film critics awarded you the best supporting actor of the year that time.
Yes,
It must have been a great thrill, a young man at your age, to get such a... What did you think about that?
Well, it was a real head-turner. Of course, when one is young, one tends to believe everything.
Did you believe yourself as Caligula when you did throughout the whole film, Jay? You have to, because I feel, talking to you right now,
Yes.
I bet you did.
I probably did.
You lived
the role.
You did live the role.
Well, of course, I did The Robe, you see, and then the response was so extraordinary. You have to understand, I mean, today we see all of these bizarre things on the screen and the music videos and the rock groups and everything, but I was David Bowie dropped into the 1950s.
You're right.
I was a bizarre creature in the middle of all these straight arrows. I mean, the young leading men of that time were Robert Wagner, Jeff Hunter, Tab Hunter, and so, I mean, all kind of clean-cut, all-American boys, and here I was the same age, say, as R.J. Wagner. He was doing Prince Valiant, and I was playing Caligula.
And then you did another one with Susan Hayward and Victor Mature.
Well, we did the sequel.
The sequel
to The Robe. They didn't call it a sequel in those days because the word sequel was absolutely verboten.
Right.
So, I mean, today, if it were done, it would be called The Robe 2, I'm sure. But then it was called Demetrius and the Gladiators.
Demetrius and the Gladiator.
And the catchword for the publicity was, the phrase was, the movie that begins where the Robe left off.
Right, right.
So, and of course, the Robe was an enormous success.
It was.
Opened the first CinemaScope film, the first film to be done with stereophonic sound.
Right.
Opened at the Roxy Theater in New York.
Did you go?
No, not to the Roxy.
Where'd you?
But I went to the Grauman's Chinese premiere on September 24th, 1953, with Anne Bancroft.
You went with
as
her?
my date for the evening. And to show you how much the I was living the role of Caligula.
At that time?
I pulled up in a gold-plated Cadillac.
Did you really?
So. Anyway, every star in Hollywood was there. I mean, and everyone, well, the A-list, you
Must
know.
have been a great trip.
It was an extraordinary evening. I mean, to see Barbara Stanwyck there, and Ginger Rogers, and, oh, I don't know, Joan Crawford, and Gable, and Ty
Susan
Power.
Hayward, come on, Susan Hayward, one of my greatest actresses ever. You worked with her in Demetrius.
Well, she was wonderful. Susan Hayward was
I want to show this.
fantastic lady.
This is from Demetrius and the Gladiator with Susan Hayward. Look at this. Can we look at that? Oh, wasn't she? What kind of really a woman was she?
Very, very down to earth.
Was she?
Very real human being, very regular, and liked me enormously. And I liked her, and she called me Emp for Emperor. So we got on. We had wonderful scenes together in the film, and really made me feel, you know, very good working with her.
Working with Susan Hayward, directors. Did she give them ideas? When did you
Well,
see
she
anything?
had, of course, she was a major movie star at that time, and of course had a lot of power at the studio. I mean, not perhaps the way they do now,
right?
But she knew what she wanted to do as Messalina, and we just clicked. We just the wonderful scenes where I attempted to throttle her at one point, and sadistically played with her, and marvelous stuff with her. But yeah, it was quite an experience. Oh, these wonderful women that I played opposite.
Bette Davis, the Virgin Queen.
Bette
Anthony
Davis.
Quinn.
Right.
Come on.
Well, let me see. Bette Davis was the next one, and that was the Virgin Queen.
Virgin Queen.
1955. And I played her favored courtier, Lord Chadwick. And we became fast friends during the making of the movie. There was a sort of a great rapport between us. She brought...
What do you think that made it? What do you think Bette Davis and you made that rapport? What do you think?
I don't know. I think she said to me, she said, "You're like me in that, you know, every line is an Academy Award." I mean, you know, my tendency always is to, you know, be rather larger than life, and I think that's why, of course, Betty was always a little larger than life. But she brought her daughter, B.D., who later, of course, wrote the book, My Mother's Keeper, many years later, but at that point she was a young girl, brought her up to my house in Bel Air and to see my pet monkeys, and B.D. wanted to carry off one of the monkeys, and Betty wouldn't allow her to. But we just got on really well. And
your house in Bel Air, getting back, the plated the plated car. I can't believe. Yeah, tell me about the parties Jay Robinson threw in Hollywood. You had Monty Clift there. You had all the big stars.
Yeah, all the big stars.
Rock Hudson. They all came to your parties.
It was interesting. Recently, Marilyn Monroe, of course, came to the house, and James Dean, and Rock Hudson, and Montgomery Clift, Natalie Wood. And there was an article done on me recently and listed those five. And I thought, you know, it was strange. They picked those five people of all the thousands of guests that came to the house. But I thought at the time, isn't it strange they should select those five? They all died tragically.
Right.
So, and of course, I'm still here.
Survivor.
Yeah, survivor.
You've had some tough times here in Hollywood, Jay Robinson.
Yeah.
You've had some tough times.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of them. I'd like you to tell me about the time you got arrested. For what?
Well,
really?
We'll put this in the sort of the context of the time to sort of put it.
This is
set it 1958.
58.
When the career did not, I mean, of course, there was extraordinary triumph in the Robe, and followed by an equal triumph in Demetrius
Right,
and the
right.
Gladiators.
Of course.
Then I did the movie with Bette Davis, Virgin Queen. Then I did The Wild Party with Anthony Quinn.
Right.
And the final film was My Man Godfrey with June Allison and David Niven.
Right.
Anyway, but there was this great promise. In other words, almost a case of too much too soon. I came on, made such a splash as Caligula, got all these awards, you know,
Yes.
A Star is Born overnight kind of thing.
Right.
Happens today
Right, of
with
course.
kids on television, but this was, you
And-
know, incredible for somebody as young as I was.
Right.
When that promise, that extraordinary debut was not followed by equally great roles, when the Caligula, I mean, when roles of that stature did not materialize, I slipped into something that is now very commonplace, but in that era was not, which was the drug scene.
Right.
So experimented with various drugs, not so much I mean, more or less as an escape thing.
Right.
To get away from the pain and the suffering and the fact that I'd begun so brilliantly and then it didn't go on, you
Yes.
know, on that level. So there was an arrest in Bel Air on November 13th, this memory for dates,
Yes.
1958. 6 policemen from the narcotics squad burst into the big mansion in Bel Air and found a tiny quantity of something called methadone in my bathroom off the master bedroom. And the next day, of course, the headlines
Right.
that followed this arrest were, I mean, mind-boggling. It was as if war was declared.
Right.
Star of religious film, Bel Air mansion raided, narcotics rap, you know, this type of thing. And but I mean, talking about
Right.
8-column banner lead headlines in the Los Angeles Times, wire services
Right.
all over the world, and of course, I was instantly persona non grata in Hollywood. Today, it would be a traffic, you know, like a traffic ticket, a
ticket,
$50
yes,
fine.
yes.
Then it was blown, you know, out of proportion totally to what it was.
And you spent some time, and then you came out. Was it tough for you then? It was tough, Jay?
Well, when it's a whole long story. There was kind of like a pariah thing in Hollywood for a few years. I went back to the theater, played some wonderful parts on the stage, then came back, and eventually had to spend a little over a year in prison on this little
Stupid
minor
little
possession
thing.
charge,
Right.
which is incredible today. But it happened, and in a way, you know, ultimately it tends to kind of deepen you. And
Didn't you wrote a book, The Comeback?
The Comeback.
A very spiritual book of all who fell by the wayside. This is what Bette Davis is saying.
Well, Betty, yes. Betty, this is very interesting. I wrote a book in
Can I see this? Yeah. That's it, called
1978 called The Comeback. And the publisher sent Bette Davis, knowing of our friendship. Of course, we had done The Virgin Queen in '55 and did Bunny O'Hare in 1970.
Right.
Sent her the book, and she called me and said, "I cannot believe that you have survived all of this." And I said, "Betty, this comes from the ultimate survivor, Bette Davis." So she said, "Who's doing the forward?" in her inimitable way,
Yes.
on the telephone.
Yes.
And I said, "Well, there is no forward plan. I'm doing the forward, and I'm going to do it in my own handwriting." So she said, "You come over to the Hollywood Colonial, where she was living, and bring 8 sheets of lined paper." And
This is Betty, right?
Betty and I...
Look at this. Can I see this? Go ahead. Go on, finish.
Betty and I in 1970, when we were in Albuquerque doing Bunny O'Hare. But anyway, she said, "Bring these sheets of paper over to my apartment.
Right.
I will handwrite this forward, and this will be the way it goes in the front of the book." So I did, and she wrote this wonderful foreword, and the book came out and was a massive bestseller, sold over 500,000 copies. And very interesting. It tells the whole story of the rise and fall and rise again. So...
Would you call yourself a survivor? Yes, you've got to be a survivor.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is J. Robinson spiritual?
Yes, yes, yes. I don't know, spiritual, but I believe that everything begins from this point on.
Yes.
And I think there is a reason for everything. I mean, to go through, that tremendous early success on Broadway, and then all of that extraordinary thing, and then, to be down and out.
Yes.
And then to come back. You asked the question earlier about, the comeback. How
comeback, yes.
But in '68, I came out of the prison.
Right.
And I found that the very thing that had destroyed me 10 years earlier,
right.
I mean, the arrest, the trial, all the terrible negative publicity, Bob Rafelson, the producer, director, whatever, said to me at a meeting we had, he said, you're kind of a folk hero, or a legend. Well, of course, at this point, '68, drugs were everywhere, and what I had done was nothing.
Yes.
And I remember riding with my wife down Sunset Boulevard, and seeing all these people, zonked out on drugs, all over and I thought, I went to prison for this, but, began to work again and put it behind me, and began again a second career at age 38.
It was hard, wasn't it, Jay?
Well, it was hard in the sense that it had all been so easy when I was a very young kid, and I came onto Broadway, and then I went to Hollywood, and I had all this fame and all this money and all this success, and then lost it all, had to begin, all over again at almost 40.
Yes, yes.
And so the first career, like 2 careers in Hollywood, the first one was so spectacular. The second one is described in my book in a long chapter called Climbing the Glass Mountain. So that the second time it was the guest star things on the episodic television, the Star Treks, the Mannixes, the Bewitched, the odd roles.
That saved your life, though, didn't it, Jay?
Oh, absolutely.
That saved your life.
Absolutely.
Looking back over your career, J. Robinson, you have any regrets at all?
No.
Would you do it the same way?
Well, no, I wouldn't. I
mean, 19, you were a very big success.
Yeah.
How would you handle it differently? How would you handle it that differently?
Well, I think now, I think life, the career is only a slice of the pie. It isn't the whole pie.
Right.
And I think that so many people make the mistake of, I remember as a young kid living at the Algonquin Hotel.
I lived there too.
Did you?
I certainly did.
Going to all the opening nights. But you'd step off a curb, or I would at least, and if a taxi cab almost hit me, I would say, oh, my career, not my life.
Right.
And there's more to life than just the career. I'm still very determined, very dedicated, and looking forward to the next great role. But it isn't my whole life. So, I mean, it's just part of it. So maybe that's, of course, I wouldn't have gotten into the,
What would J. Robinson would like to do right now, 1991? This is 1991. Jay, you wrote a book. You've had successful, you produced. Have you directed?
No,
You're writing a script?
I've never directed. I produced on Broadway.
Right.
I think.
But you were very young when you produced on Broadway.
Yeah, I was 21.
That's young.
At the great old Empire.
Yeah. They say you were one of the youngest on Broadway.
Youngest producer in the history of Broadway.
That's...
But I don't know, it's like a long, 45 years I've been an actor.
And where are you
worked with so many greats.
Where are you originally from?
New York City.
New York City. You grew up there?
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was...
Children, family?
Only child.
Your only child?
Only child. And my dad was with Van Heusen and Shirts. My mom was Bobby Bresslaw, was a Broadway dancer in the 20s.
Always wanted to be an actor?
Always wanted to be an actor.
And
never considered anything else. Never studied a day. People say, well, how did you achieve this effect? Or, well, who did you study with? Well, but of course I had the incredible experience of all that early theater. Work and working with so many remarkable people over the years.
Yeah, look at this one. This is Shampoo. I did a movie called The Black Shampoo.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And I played the same thing you're playing right here.
Played
the
Mr.
hairdresser.
Norman.
Uh-huh.
Well, this is with Warren Beatty.
Lauren Beatty and Shampoo.
In Shampoo. That was
Right.
1975.
And we came out in 76, and we did a
With the
movie.
Black Shampoo?
Black Shampoo.
This was a remarkable success and a fun role to play. But you asked about 1991 and
Yes.
looking forward.
Are you looking forward? What's happening?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You know, I'm 60.
Good age.
And
good age.
it's a good age.
Yes.
And, you know, I am so encouraged by the success of old friends and contemporaries like Dennis Hopper now, after Blue Velvet and the Hoosiers. You know, suddenly Dennis is up
friend.
there, and again, and then Dean Stockwell on Quantum Leap, and others, Richard Beymer on Twin Peaks. I mean, this is marvelous. So, I mean, you know, the wonderful thing about actors, you just, it's always the next, you know, what's your favorite role? Well, the one I'm going to play next.
Jay, when you sit at home, I just watched you on TV. It was just on.
Yeah.
When you see yourself as click on 19, 18, 17, when you see yourself on film, carrying on like that.
Yes.
I mean, you're 60 years old now.
Right.
What kind of feeling do you get? What is your...
Well, I look at the, you know, myself, somebody in Jack Haley's office, Jack Haley Jr.'s office,
yes.
a young woman over there that we met at the Thalians Ball this year. Anyway, she, I said, there's a movie I did with Anthony Quinn called The Wild Party, 1956.
Right.
Never seen the movie. And how can I get this movie? So she called up MGM, and anyway, a couple of days later, she said, I found the movie for you. But I'm looking at myself. I took the movie home and popped it into the VCR, and I was looking at it, and I thought, isn't this amazing? Here's this skinny kid looking, you know, another fiendish role, and thinking, it's like, or looking over the holidays, they showed The Robe and they showed Demetrius the Gladiators on the Movie Classics channel. And I'm looking at this, and it's like looking at someone I knew once a long time ago. I cannot relate to the Jay Robinson of that time at all.
I understand.
You know, it's strange. It's
You've been married how long now?
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
How'd you meet your wife?
Well, this was during a very dark period, after I'd lost it all.
And she came to you?
No, no. I was in the Bank of America in Hollywood, trying to negotiate a loan without any collateral.
I see.
And the stress and the strain of everything that was going on at that terrible time in my life, 1960, early 1960, was just a bit much, and I got pressure in my chest.
I see.
And so the bank, the loan officer said, we better get you to a doctor. Turned out to be nothing. Went over there, and Pauline, my wife-to-be, was the nurse in the office.
How wonderful.
And that's how we met. And we married a few days later.
Children?
We have one.
One,
J. Paul, who lives in San Francisco.
Actor?
Oh, no. No, works in a law office there.
Tell me about Bette Davis. Back it
Yes.
up. Bette Davis, one of the greatest actresses. Can you share a moment with me with Bette Davis, some of the great moments you can remember?
Well, we were very close friends, and she was things that people don't generally know about her. She had enormous